Recording it.
Hello and good evening, everyone. I'm so happy you're back listening to the Gestalt Get-Together. For all of you joining live, thank you so much. Feel free to post any questions or comments in the chat. We'll get to them at the end of the episode if we have time. Welcome once again to the Gestalt Get-Together. This is your speech therapy PD podcast for discussing Gestalt processing, echolalia, special interests, music, and play. My name is Corinne Zmoos, and I'm a speech language pathologist who works almost exclusively with Gestalt Language Processors. Now, before we get started, it is important for me to share my disclosures, my financial disclosures. I'm the owner of Crescendo Communication, my private practice. I provide coaching and consultation. I'm a paid speaker, and I receive compensation for episodes of the Gestalt Get-Together from SpeechTherapyPD. Additionally, for any parents listening, whether live or later on in a streaming platform, I am a therapist, but I am not your child's therapist. This podcast is purely for education purposes and not therapy advice for your child. Please talk to your own speech language pathologist about any ideas on here to make sure they're actually a good fit for your child. This course is offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs. If you're here for the live recording, make sure you get credit by heading over to SpeechTherapyPD to complete the quiz before the end of the day. If you're listening later and want CEUs, you should use my code Gestalt33 because you're going to get a discount on your annual membership. We're halfway through the year, but remember, by the end of the year, you need a certain amount of hours. Why not get them with me here? All right, so my guest tonight is actually a returning guest. I believe our first returning guest, but her first episode was so popular. We got so many comments, people reaching out about how much they enjoyed it. We had to have her back. So Cristina Easton is the founder of Impact Educational Consulting, LLC, Director at Educator Support Collaborative, and Program Strategy Manager at adoptaclassroom.org. She engages in special education advocacy with Weinfeld Education Group. With extensive experience in education, Cristina has designed inclusive instructional models, founded a new school, developed strategic plans, implemented equitable grading systems, and led teams as a school administrator. A 2024 graduate of the ARC of Maryland's Partners in Policymaking, she actively works to foster a world that embraces equity and joy for her son and all of us. In 2021, Cristina and her husband learned that their son is autistic. This catapulted their family into autism acceptance and family advocacy. Cristina was a member of the 2025 Kennedy Krieger Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Other Related Disabilities program, and the ARC of Maryland's Partners in Policymaking 2024 cohort. So a very, very busy person, making a lot of changes and supporting a lot of people locally, but also on this podcast, reaching a lot more people around the country. So I want to say welcome to the podcast, Cristina. Welcome back.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you back here.
Me.
Of course.
Oh my gosh. I know that's my bio and I wrote it, but
I don't know, there's something about hearing what you've done and accomplished.
Well, especially because most of the time we're just talking about what I do as mom.
Yep.
So it's a nice reminder. I do all these other things. Yeah. I'm blacked out most of the time. No, I'm just kidding.
But you get used to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes you hear it, you're like, whoa.
I know things.
It's a good feeling. It is. So we're going to have some people on here who heard your first episode, but plenty of other people listening who don't know about your story. So tell us about how did you get onto this podcast about Gestalt language processing? What happened?
So my son was diagnosed at 21 months, right? So, and a lot of that, and also mid-COVID, right? So we were deep in the fact that he was not doing things as we expected. And a major one of those things was communication, right? And so from the beginning, as happens with many families, you get your diagnosis and they're like, hurry up, get all the interventions immediately, yesterday. And we did. Our first experience with speech therapy was virtual early intervention parent coaching that eventually turned in person. We did all the things, the ABA, the private speech, the OT, right? All of the things. And at some point in that process, gosh, I've lost track of time. I want to say, how long have we been working together? 3 years?
3 years.
Yeah. So 3 years ago, a friend of mine, you develop these online, especially parents in COVID. I think all of our friends are from the internet at this point. And somebody sent me a invitation to your grand opening of your spot. And I was like, oh, cool, a concert. Ellis likes a band, and I don't really take him to things like this because he runs around, and this sounds like something where he can run around and maybe he'll pay attention to music. I know he likes music. He, at that point, was singing Wheels on the Bus on 24/7 loop. So we walk in, and he immediately was like, lady in sparkly dress. And you immediately were like, amazing child who doesn't stop singing. I don't know, something happened. I wasn't a part of it. You two.
Well, because I immediately clocked GLP.
Right.
It's like right. You.
And that's so great that you say it like that, because I knew nothing about GLP at that point. My experience with speech therapy up until that point had been first then boxes and toys to motivate joint attention. That was a lot of what, and we had another private speech therapist who had introduced AAC to us and was doing a lot of work with that and trying to support his ABA clinic in implementing it, right? So that had been our experience so far. To me, I just saw my kid light up, and it was very clear that the two of you understood each other. And at the end of the event, I was like, I don't know what you do. How do I get him back with you? Like, again, we need to work that he needs to spend time with you. And that's how it started. And I think our first session was the I like that session where it was the first time I heard him like really use one of his melodies in a purposeful way where he himself knew he was doing it. Like you could just see it. And that's how I knew that this was a different approach that was lining up with whatever was going on for him. Fast forward 3 years, we've worked with you in the clinic space, in our home, and Ellis has, I mean, I don't want to do the thing that parents do where they're like, my baby started talking and everything was fine, right? Like, no, we're not there. But he is a different kid and communicating in ways that, I would not have imagined. I was just saying to Corinne before we started that I had gotten very okay with the fact that he might not say words. And now we're at the place where every day he has a new approximation and it's happening independently and it's just different, right? Um, so I'm a former special educator too, and a lot of why I love this kind of conversation and this platform is because I wish I'm not going to do it. I can't. Y'all heard my bio. I'm never going back to the classroom. It's not going to happen. But oh my God, if I could, the things I have learned observing how my kid learns are so applicable to just learning in general. And so I will talk about this all day long to anyone who will listen because I wish I knew. And I also think that our speech process might have looked different if we had started here.
Mm,
Not that I have any regrets,
sure, sure.
but like I wonder sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of what you just said is why I wanted to have you on, is because once I started learning about your background in education, the way you think about students and the way students fit into systems learning styles,
Hmm.
there are so many overlaps. And I think it's cool when we've been able to make those connections. And I'm hoping we can bring those onto the podcast today. You also mentioned when we shifted from clinic to in-home,
Hmm.
which then allowed for some really cool coaching conversations too. And we were doing like a beginning and end, kind of what we
Yeah.
like going to coin like the sandwich approach, which has maintained, but it's really different in the home.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people listening, you're in different settings. And so some of this may not feel applicable, but I hope you're going to maybe be able to pull out one or two ideas for those brief conversations that you get,
Yeah.
if anything applies. So let's talk about the coaching model. I want to share some of a lot of what I pull from is for early intervention, but we know that Ellis and truly like a lot of other clients I have, they're getting older, and some of
Mhm.
these principles. I know, sorry, just kidding.
Sorry.
He's
It's
always
so
going to say this
triggering.
to
Every
me.
time you say
Sorry,
that, I'm like, he has the word grade in school. He's
just
in
kidding.
first grade, like a real grade. And he has real teeth that are going to live longer than me.
Time isn't real. Don't worry about it.
Sorry.
Okay.
They'll get used to our tangents.
So with the coaching model, and a lot of what I pull is from early intervention. There's a good amount of research about the efficacy of coaching in early intervention, but you see this across disciplines, this like motivational interviewing, conversational coaching in a lot of different places in life, because the core principles are about motivation, about behavior change, about why do people shift their patterns and kind of like the well-worn paths. So let me share the coaching model. So in the traditional early intervention model, a therapist often works directly with a child during visits, while parents might be, might be observing, might be supporting from the sidelines. But this coaching model, it kind of turns the approach on its head to a certain degree. It can be a blended approach too. So instead of simply doing therapy with a child, you providers kind of partner with caregivers. There's this collaborative approach. You might be teaching, modeling, observing, giving feedback so that a caregiver feels more confident using strategies or extrapolating upon those strategies during everyday routines. And that's something that's come up in our work, is this idea of like, you've said, like, I can't be the therapist. The idea of like carving out therapy time, is that realistic? Or is it, what can I bring into the things we're already doing? Like we talked about pool time.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about for those other like 160 plus hours a week, excluding sleep, however, sleep can be an area for strategies too. But how can you expand that hour? And I know a lot of kids are also just getting 30 minutes a week too.
Right.
Anything in that description stand out to you?
Um, I think that as teaching professionals, because I very much look at therapists as teaching professionals, right?
Mm,
Like from obviously like there's a different kind of clinical background, but like, one of the things that we have in common is that I think comes out in the coaching model in particular is and we talked about this before, I think on the
yeah.
last one, the I do, we do, you do,
Mm,
that workshop model approach, like the reason that that is so valuable is not only because you're accessing different kinds of learning styles and you're being able to show this is the expectation. Now we're going to practice it together, build our confidence. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to make sure you're on the right track. But the you do part is so important because um I always talk about when Corinne comes in the house, uh there's a moment where Ellis is like, "Oh yeah, my friend who speaks my language. My God,
mm,
where have you been? Let's come. I gotta tell you, they have like a thing." And I used to, I don't think I ever really looked at it like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have that same click," because we have our own click.
yeah,
But I do remember my husband sometimes saying like, "Man, like you really get it," and not feeling like he necessarily got it.
I
But the
see.
more
Okay.
time he spends watching, the
Yeah.
more time we spend like doing it with you, the more comfortable and the more naturally it comes to us when you're not there.
Yeah.
And that I think is where a lot of parents need the support because so many parents I talk to are always like, I don't know what to do. I don't have this background. Nobody shows, and it's like, this is where you can get that. But the
Mhm.
doing it together part is super, super important.
And it can look a lot of different ways, right? There's like the, not pure coaching, but there's some models out there where it's like review the plan, determine what you're going to work on, practice, feedback, joint plan. There's kind of this
Hmm.
curve I see in my head. There's lots of different ways to modify it depending on the kid, depending on the caregivers. And I think what you're talking about, it relates to this idea of in vivo feedback to
Hmm.
someone. So in the moment, but also I think this idea of in vivo analysis. And so we will do just like, we're going to get to how kind of we structure it, where we've seen some success there. But the moments of in vivo analysis where I'll turn and be
Hmm.
like, here's what just happened. Here's why I think that's important. But there's also reciprocity there, where I think where therapists can potentially watch out for and improve on, of making sure you're getting analysis back from a caregiver of like what did you just notice, or what does that mean? So how many times do I turn to you after he produces an approximation of a song lyric being like, do you know what that's from?
Right,
But if I were in a therapy room with him, I would just be trying to roll with it, or maybe just be like, all right, I kind of have to let that one go. I don't
right,
know what song that was.
right, right. Yeah. Yeah, I think the way I say it is that like I know his source material better than anybody who
Yeah.
works with him, right?
Yeah.
It's the music we're listening to in the car. It's the music that's on the TV in the background all day when I'm doing other things. Like you could be the best therapist on the planet and not know his source material. And I
Yeah.
think with GLPs in particular, that is, I mean, that's all of it.
Yeah.
It's so much of what we need to be able to know what's happening and be able to give the child a sense of understanding too, right? The other thing that struck me when you were talking about the analysis piece
Yeah.
that happens a lot with us is I I was just before we came on here, I was joking with you about how I have to like try to not keep talking because I've gotten over the years, I've gotten so deep in this stuff that like I trapped this poor woman at the pool the other day who started with a very innocent question about, oh, is he autistic? Oh, he sings a lot. And then, 40 minutes later, she's still in the water listening to me talk about Gestalt language processing. Um, but I got to that point because I now feel confident in what I know about my kid.
Yeah.
Because you don't only ask me, like, oh, do you know what that's from? A lot of times what happens is you'll do the analysis for me, you'll model it, you'll say, here's what just happened, here's why it's important. And then I will say, you know where else I'm seeing that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that I think that happened the other day. And the more I'm able to give you, the more it confirms what you think you saw. And then we
Yeah.
have this like validation that makes
Yeah.
me know what I'm looking for too when you're not there. And I
Yeah,
see what you did
yeah.
to reinforce it, and then I can do that.
It's so much where like about the dialogue, and I'm thinking about, because on the therapist side of it, there's lots of different type of therapists, right? But I know a lot of therapists really value like having a plan, wanting the session to go a certain way. It can be harder with a GLP or an autistic kid whose regulation is going to be different every day. Maybe sleep was really hard, food was really hard, um, and so being able to kind of expect and accept that it might be a really hard session, but the dialogue can be a lot of the sessions. Sometimes I think about the times we've had, like, he might be having a hard day, things just aren't
Mhm.
clicking. And that's when it transforms into, most of the session is engaging the coaching conversation. And sometimes those lead to the most powerful ideas that then get
Yeah.
carried over.
Yeah, I think it also is a really good way of helping like parents feel like they also are experts in their kid,
Mm,
right? It's hard for a parent to watch a session that's not going right.
yeah.
And I know I have had moments where I have tried to make the session go right, and for all kinds of different reasons. We're paying for this. We only
Yeah.
have an hour. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want them to judge my kid, whatever it
Yeah.
is, right? I mean, that's not between you and me. I mean, it
Yeah.
never. But
Yeah.
I know that that comes up when we're able to shift the focus to the adult experience. Like, we can't, without starting a whole nother podcast topic, I think something that we can't gloss over in this dynamic between parent and professional is that by the time you met me, we had already worked with two ABA companies in three different settings. I think he'd had like four early intervention people. Um, Along with ABA, you have all the RBTs, the BCBAs. Like we had seen the neurodevelopmental. I can't even list how many
Yeah.
professionals we had seen before we met you who had something to tell us about our kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that dynamic can put a parent in a position where they don't think they know anything about their kid,
Mm-hmm.
but they live with the kid. They watch the kid. They know what the kid needs before the kid has communicated anything, which in some ways can be harmful because now he doesn't have to communicate anything. We went through that
Mm-hmm.
whole thing where I realized how much we were doing for him, and so there was no purpose to communication for him, right? Um, and so when you can make a session about the parent, those have been some of the most powerful sessions for me because those are often the days where I'm watching him have a hard time
Mm-hmm.
and I'm having a hard time. And then you're able to say, well, we can still make this meaningful. And I learned something that I can use.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm the recipient. And I mean, you said it's not just working with the child, it's everybody, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's okay to like let that really be true in some sessions and really work directly with the parent. Um,
I
yeah,
also think about like the structure of a session too, and I'm always going to tag things like this with, I know there's a lot of people listening, their settings do not allow
right.
for, right, or for, and like when it comes to the way you word things for insurance. Again, I hope you're able to take at least one idea and apply it, but I am speaking from a setting and a modality that might be different from a lot of people. So just keeping that in mind. But the way to structure a session too, we had a really powerful conversation around the dining room table where he was just hungry. He was
Hmm.
done. He was hungry. We just kept striking out the whole session with what I was trying to do and model and try with him. But it was great because we were able to sit down and we were able to have what I refer to as a pull back the curtain conversation. Because a lot of this job is like you prepare something, you perform it, and you hope that it goes well. But a pull back the conversation question is, hey, that didn't work. What do you think about that? Right? It's very vulnerable,
Hmm.
but it's led to great conversations. Like today was really hard. Like nothing clicked. Let's talk about it. And we're able to come to, this was your idea of, on days like this, let's have a backup idea of something we can problem solve, a project we can do, something that can be addressed where we don't actually need Ellis present and participating. So this
Yeah.
idea of talking about not just like initial structure, but can we collaborate to restructure what this time looks like?
I love how you call that the pull back the curtain, because I also think a lot of parents, when they come into session, there's a lot of pressure
Okay.
to like do our homework.
Yeah.
Like we always end our session with like, what was your takeaway? What are you going to work on this week? And that's a really important question. Especially because some sessions, there's so much that happened. Like I would just walk away and be like, that was cool, and then do nothing with it all week to reinforce, right? So it's a really important question, but with it comes the anxiety of what if I forget that this is what I'm supposed to do, or I can't find the time, or it's just too much, I just don't have the capacity. And there have been sessions that you come back the next week and you say, how did it go? And I say to you, I didn't do any of it. I don't even remember what we
Yeah.
talked about last
And
week,
then
right?
I yell at you and I
No,
leave.
and you
Yeah.
shame me
Yeah.
and you threaten me. No, I'm kidding. Like, I mean, the whole point is that this model makes that okay.
Yeah.
For me, my big challenge is managing his AAC, whether it's
Yeah.
his device or all of our a million laminated things around the house or the buttons. And I always feel like he is progressing faster than I can keep up with these systems that are supposed to be supportive to him and access to him.
Yeah.
And so in those days, we've had sessions where you're like, okay, let's work on programming,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or what do you want this choice board to look like? How
Yeah.
does it operate in your daily life? You haven't had time to think about how to make this useful, let alone actually make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it takes so much pressure off the parent to know that some days you can just work on a project, right? I'm also thinking about for people who don't have that kind of setting, we used to take Ellis to an OT clinic where he would go back for his session and I would stay in the waiting room during the
Yeah.
session. And a lot of times the clinician would come out and be like, here's what we did today. And I would watch other clinicians come out to other parents and be like, he did this, he did this, he did this. We had so much fun. And then it was it. But when the clinician came out and said, hey, we worked on this thing, this is how it went. And last week you asked me a question about feeding. I brought you a pamphlet.
Mm.
I might not ever read the pamphlet. I mean, I did most of the time. But sometimes I would lose the pamphlet as soon as I got home. But having it, even that was enough coaching for me to know the thing I brought up to you was real and valid and not just me whining or confused. You found a resource that gave me feedback and a structure I can follow that I could even ask you about next week, even though I'm not participating in the session the same way. And it would literally take 30 seconds,
Yeah.
you know? So I think the big piece is the validation in whatever strategy you're using, validating the parent experience so that they feel confident supporting the child when they are not in session with you. Because I think ultimately that's what matters most.
And if something isn't actually reasonable or practical for that, we call the in between,
Hmm.
then it can be frustrating on both sides, right? Because if it's not working,
Hmm.
within this network or this like greater relationship, whether it's three different nodes in the relationship, four different nodes, or like, let's say grandparents are involved too. There's lots of different
Hmm.
nodes. And so I think on the therapist side, being able to accept and modify of like, okay, it's okay for it to be less this week, or for it to be more of like a more finite thing rather than just like model language this week.
Hmm.
Like that's big, right? Or
Yeah, model language. Jesus, that's like all day, every day.
right, that's a
But
big
how?
one, but it's right, it's the how, it's the when. And so I remember when I was doing EI in DC, a really important part of the coaching arc or structure was at the end, you talked about when and where.
Right, right.
Instead of just, okay, this week, I want you to practice not asking any questions, just commenting. But what I learned through the coaching model that was developed through, we pulled from, I think it was Sheldon and Rush. So I'm going to find that link for you guys who are here listening live. I'm going to find you some links for that. And then for those of you who are listening later on, the link will be in the show notes. That helping a family or a daycare teacher in early education, because we were in EI, you also go into schools,
Mhm.
collaborate there, about when do you think you'll be able to do this? Where do you think you'll be able to do this?
That is one
Because,
of the most helpful frameworks for me
okay, yeah.
when we're working together
Mm-hmm.
because as a parent, it's all the time. It's all the time, right? And so once you're able to say, like we've had sessions where it's like, oh, I can work on you know, turn taking at the pool because he really is enjoying this game where I go
Yeah.
under the water, right? Or requesting at mealtime,
Yeah.
using his button to say he's all done or once more to reinforce the use of devices for communication. He's sitting in one place, mealtime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that helps me because when I don't have the when and where, it is highly likely that's going to be the week that you come back next week and I say, I don't know, what did we talk about? What was I supposed to do? I don't remember. As opposed to giving me a capsule, like you
Mm-hmm.
only have to do this in this spot instead of feeling like you have to do it all the time.
And it also helps, I think, with visualization, right? Because then you're starting to visualize yourself enacting it. If you're able to visualize it, you might be more likely to then like see yourself doing it, of course. But then when that routine happens, remembering that you had that idea and committed to it to a certain extent of you're getting into the pool, you'd already visualized yourself in this next time in the pool. Hopefully it will be evoked and then you're going to be able to take action on it rather than just do this strategy.
Right.
The when and the where might then cue you when that time actually comes.
And for things that don't come naturally to you, choosing a when and where that is a common routine
Mm-hmm.
also gives you lots of opportunity to practice. Like when we
Yeah.
were working on Ellis getting dressed, that's every day.
Yeah.
It was making me sweat. It was making me super stressed. I don't think I've updated you that I don't sweat anymore when he's getting dressed.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's great. Um, but but a lot of that is because I feel more confident in how to support him because I had to practice the strategies every day and I could come back to you and say, here's what's working, here's what's not.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's really important too. And I think for caregivers and for teachers who might be listening too, it is okay to say when something isn't working.
Hmm.
I wonder if on your side, does that feel uncomfortable, scary? I know maybe not at this point,
Yeah,
but being
not
able,
not at this stage because we've developed such an open like relationship, but there have certainly been times, oh gosh, sorry, having like there have been times with all of our providers at
yeah.
some point where I have felt like I am not doing the thing and I don't know if I'm not doing it right or if it's not working, but I'm so frustrated right now. If I say it out loud, it's going to sound nasty.
Mm,
And I don't want to do that. I think parents carry a lot of frustration when things aren't working. because we experience that very differently than like, oh, that was a bad session, how can I adjust for next time? It's
Yeah.
like next time is constant, right?
Mm,
So it's hard to say to somebody, to a professional, this isn't working,
yeah.
because I don't always know why, and because by the time I'm willing to say that, I'm so burnt.
Yeah.
Right? Um, Sorry, I was laughing because I think that comes up a lot with like routines. Like
Yeah.
we went through it with AVA making recommendations about naps and then what that really looked like at home. And it
Okay.
was a couple years where like that was a stage of our lives of
Mm,
that push and pull of like, do we listen? Do we not? Is it okay to say this
interesting.
isn't actually happening?
Yeah.
You know? Um, and I'm also laughing because last week I revealed my nasty to you and you were like, I love it. I'm so
It's
honored.
real, right? That's the real stuff. And it's a window into like your life where you're actually at. And that is also the idea of calibration, where
Hmm.
on the side of the therapist, getting a window into what you're actually feeling, what you're actually experiencing, and the reality of whether implementing any of this is possible allows us to then calibrate
Right.
instead of just being like, all right, let me just keep going with these recommendations. Because a lot of us, we have a progression in our head, based on
Hmm.
linguistic development, what our plan looks like. But if you're not in the place for that, it's really, really helpful to know. And like, again, that calibration is really important and helpful, even if it comes in a form of really like deep emotion or frustration, it's really good information.
You do it with kids all the time. I watch providers do this with their client all
Mm,
the time, right?
yeah,
That they come in and they're dysregulated or they need a little trampoline time before we do whatever the plan was, right?
yeah,
Like, and I, listening to you describe calibration, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's what you're doing, but you're doing it with the adult who
yeah,
has to be the recipient and the carrier of what you're leaving them with, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I've also done that with like when I'm working with, like I'm doing a push into a school or a daycare, that with the providers there as well. And also moments where, again, very context dependent, turning to you, and I do it with other families too, because you walk in, you catch the vibe, right? Turning and being like, need a minute? You want to just go like do your thing, take a little walk right now. Um, and like giving permission for them to take a breath.
Yeah.
Because like, let's say you're coming in with the idea of like, all right, we're checking about this. I want to get you involved in this. But if you're not at a place where you can hear that and receive that information for whatever's, going on outside of that, can we get to a place where you have like you're then more ready for it, if that's taking a breath or
Right.
just like
Like the
doing
days
a
you've come in and I'm like pulling my eyelashes out and you can hear me like trying to yell at him to get off the windowsill from before I even open the door.
yeah,
And you have said like, I'm gonna take him over here.
take a
Because
second.
when you've tried to ask me how's the week going, all I want to do is cuss and I
Yeah,
can't give you anything useful, right? Like
yeah. but
so
but also like hearing that reality from outside when I'm waiting there with all my stuff, I'm then because I can hear it, I can
I'm laughing because
that
you come with all the fun toys and all this stuff, and I open the window and I'm like, oh, like,
but that is also information,
yeah,
right? And I think also potentially for SLPs who are working in schools, I know that relationships with other teachers can sometimes be challenging,
yeah,
right? There's the relationship dynamics there can be challenging, but could those also be places for pull back the curtain of like, how are things actually going with this kid? How can I shift, especially if they're doing a push in where now you're in that environment with these other adults, doing the check in of like, hey, how can I be most helpful right now? That was something I did often. Again, I'm going to keep saying context dependent because I know I do, like people in the chat often will ask things like, okay, but how do I do this for other settings, which I think is a very important question. I do want to have more school-based SLPs come on to talk about it. But when I would come into a classroom and again, kind of catch the vibe, going over to the teaching assistant or the teacher being like, hey, I'm noticing what's happening in the classroom right now. How can I be most helpful right now? And then not can I, but how will I work on the goals within that very helpful facilitative context?
Hmm.
Often with me, it was, can you go do circle time? Because got my ukulele next door.
Right, right.
But then it's idea, okay, because it's routines based, let me do this thing that is going to help like ease the load, make things easier within this current routine rather than adding something new that they might not even be able to take in. If
And
it's
so much of
already, yeah.
that, yeah, it's trust building too, right? Like I think about when I was in the classroom, my experience with speech as a classroom teacher was always pull out. I was in middle and high schools in New York as a teacher in collaborative team teaching models. And so most of my kids that were getting speech, it was a lot of pragmatics, and I didn't even know that word at the time because
Yeah.
I was a baby special educator and nobody taught me. But I like all I knew is that you came and you pulled her from math, and like we were in the middle of something.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine had an SLP before pulling the student checked in with me and been like, how's it going?
Mm,
Or come back to drop the student off and been like, hey, this is a thing that happened in our session. It might have piqued my curiosity to how I could support that in the classroom more,
yeah.
right? Because a lot of it, especially in school as adults, like we are constantly being evaluated and judged, and just having somebody in our space can be intimidating. And I think that's the same as a home setting too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you come over and I'm like, I'm so embarrassed. The day that you knocked the dishes over because they were so high, and I was like, I live a gross life,
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's
But that's real life, right?
real.
It's like it's real
Yeah.
life or it's the real classroom experience right now. And then coming up with ways to bring in the strategies. And then I read something about the idea of a technique is the way you apply a strategy. So it's like we talk about the strategy, but then technique is, and people talk about like method, framework, approach, strategy, technique. But I read that today when I was finishing up our script of, okay, interesting. Strategy is what I talk about. I'll show you my techniques too. But then the technique you bring in is your spin on it,
Right, because
your
I'm not a
individual.
Corinne. I don't
Yeah,
have a ukulele. I am not as comfortable being silly, although I've gotten much better at that.
you've gotten very
I've
silly.
gotten much
Right.
better at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Um,
it's fun.
it does. Yeah.
When it feels like it's working, it's like, I want to do more of this. Yeah.
I think this bridges into something that you talked about that I had never considered before, at least the way that you framed it, which was, is it okay if I read this message that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
sent?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, because it really, I paused and I really thought about it. Because we were talking about, I do want to talk about the rock climbing
Oh, yes,
anecdote,
yes.
also because I think people need to hear about the potential for rock climbing being very powerful for autistic kids. And don't worry, I pulled some papers on it. Um, so you said, so for the rock climbing piece, it has pushed me to be more intentional as his coach versus his assistant. That's the big move I see in our dynamic with this activity and my ability to apply what I learn in our sessions. What did you mean by that?
Okay, so a little background.
Yep.
For, oh gosh, I want to say like 4 years. Um, I was taking Ellis to like a TOTS gym class, right? Tumbling,
Okay.
all the good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was wonderful. And he actually learned a lot of language from it because of all this routine that was in there. And then he started to get older. I cannot explain to you what happens in my stomach every time I say that phrase. It's on a cellular level. I have to
Yeah.
figure this out. Um, but he started to get older, and it was getting harder because number one, he's a giant child and very strong and
Yeah.
very fast.
Very strong.
And
I get knocked over.
the dude has hamstrings of an NFL player, and
I
I just
am
have
not
no
tiny and
business.
he boom, I'm over.
He has no business being as strong as
Yeah.
he is, but whatever. Um, and as he gets older, he also is in a space where he wants more independence.
Yeah.
It's very age appropriate. His skill set might not match the desire and the drive, and we were having a hard time. And I was actually getting to a point where I was like, I'm going to get hurt, right? Like,
Hmm.
I have my giant child gave me an umbilical hernia from like
Yeah.
pregnancy that I have never gotten addressed. And there were weeks of this gym class that I was like, I can't do this much longer because I can't be making him do the monkey bars. I can't be dragging him to circle time when he just wants to climb.
Sure.
And what is he learning from that? Like, what is the point,
Mm.
right? And it was super emotional, but I was like, it's time. Like, we have to stretch to something else.
Yeah.
So in another space, I saw a lot of families of non-speakers who were talking about rock climbing as a
Yeah.
motor planning thing. I had jumped on the speech and motor planning kind of
Yeah.
marriage thing. And so I took him for a session and I was like, "Oh my God." The first thing I noticed was I
Yeah.
can't help him. He's
Ooh.
up there
Yeah.
on a rope and I'm on the floor. And even if I wanted to, I can't reach him.
Wow.
And he can't tell me what he wants me to do because he's so dependent on leading. And
Yeah.
he's up there and he can't reach me,
Yeah.
right? Like the physical distance forced me to think differently about how I support him. And
Mm.
I found myself doing a lot more modeling, a lot more reminding him of his own gestalts for like up
Hmm.
and down.
Yeah.
Um, a lot more asking him questions like, what next? What
Mm.
should we do?
Like
Right?
process language. Yeah.
Yeah, which I never do that with him
Yeah.
naturally. Like I have to really think about it, but there was nothing else to do. And I was almost like euphoric because I was like, oh my God, I
Wow.
don't have to lift him. And he's doing it. And he had a hard time at first. He got like halfway up and he got stuck. And it was the first time I saw him. We joke that Ellis has a waiter hand. When he wants something, he does this
Yeah.
thing like, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
It's not a beckon, it's not a point, it's like all at the same, right? And so you have to interpret it. At the wall was the first time I saw him go,
Mm.
like, come
The
here.
come here
I
gesture.
need you. I
Yeah.
couldn't. But I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God. Like, he had to get more specific.
Yeah.
He couldn't just shout at me and waiter hand me because I'm too far away.
Yep.
And so that dynamic shift of like forcing me into a different role
Okay.
when you're the parent and you're just trying to get through the day, you end up doing a lot more hand over hand than you mean to, a lot more pick him up and move him than you
Okay.
want to, because like
You just got to get through the
I
day,
can't
right?
spend
Yeah.
an hour getting your shoes on when I know you
Yeah.
can do it. Like we gotta go,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And so opportunities that force that distance
Hmm.
required me to access different tools that I had seen you do or that we
Okay.
had talked about
Yeah.
that weren't coming up in natural routines,
I see what
you
you mean.
know?
Yeah. But I think that's a cool thing that I hadn't thought about. They kind of reference this in the Hannon program. Have you heard of Hannon before? I don't
So,
know if we've ever talked about it, but they talk about you kind of go through I forget what program, if it's more than words, or if anyone here listening knows what I'm referencing, please put in the chat. Like, what's your play partner style? Are you
mhm.
a cheerleader? I'm forgetting all of them, but there's all these different roles. But you were making me think about, yeah, what is my role in carrying things over? The idea of coach, which is from that distance,
Mhm.
I'm giving you like information on how to improve. The idea of assistant, where you're there with him, providing that. Cheerleader could also be one. I'm thinking about like, what are these different roles? And then helping a caregiver pick the one that feels right for it. Okay, so here's the routine, here's the strategy. What's the role you're going to play? What's the dynamic here? I'd never considered the idea of naming the dynamic or naming the role, because I
Right.
think that's also a way of visualizing too, visualizing the self.
Right. And then our second session, I went in prepared to do that role.
You did.
So
Okay.
I didn't have as hard of a time because when he had a hard time, I was like, well, he's gonna get out of it. I don't
Mm,
have to be the one, right?
yeah.
And I also went in knowing there's going to be a lot of opportunity for up and down. There's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of opportunity for planning and problem solving.
Yeah.
Like, I know how he does this. Now I can choose the things that I want to, instead of like trying to constantly pull from the library,
Yeah.
I went in being like, I'm gonna sing a lot of the up and down. And like 2 sessions before was the one where he was getting on your shoulders or on my, I can't remember which one it
It was,
was.
oh, it was your shoulders.
Yeah, and he was sing all of a sudden Wheels on the Bus
Yep.
came back and we
Yep.
realized it was because he was saying up
Up
and down.
and down.
Right.
Yep.
And guess what? He said up on the wall.
On the wall. Yep.
He actually said the word in our second section, right?
Yeah.
And so I know it's gonna work. I know this is this is a good dynamic for that practice, you
For
know?
that one. Yeah. I think what you're talking about, okay, this is a routine. Here's my role. Here are the gestalts, potential gestalts, mitigations I can. So I imagine that I call it like the funnel. I'm
Mm.
always doing this gesture. And I think some feedback that you gave me the last time you were on really stuck with me about explaining more what I'm doing and why.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
And that's been so helpful, because there's so much, I think, as therapists, we just feels like common knowledge because we've been thinking about, right? There's certain ideas and principles that I have talked about and thought about every day for 10 years. That doesn't mean that everybody has that knowledge or has the same kind of analysis, not skills, but this knowledge specific analysis. So I think about this idea of the funnel of here's the context or the routine, here's the role I play, here's the strategy or technique, what language then applies there. And it's this funneling down where, I'll hear from people, okay, but what do I model? Okay, let's do the funnel. Activity, role, strategy, like what's the target, what's the goal? And then let's make some decisions about what to model based on that context, rather than being in the moment like, okay, what were the gestalts? What were the potential gestalts?
Right.
What were mitigation? Preparing yourself ahead of time based on what is happening in that context.
Yep. Sorry, I got distracted because I was looking at the chat and you have a bunch of people
Do it.
naming the hand and center and the roles, the
Yes.
helper, the teacher, the mover, and the responsive
Thank
partner.
you. I didn't see the
Very cool.
notifications there. All right, let me read this
I'm
out
writing
loud.
those things down because now I have a new wormhole to go down. So thank you all.
You're gonna love it.
And
Hannon's very cool.
blame
Hannon,
you all the next time I trap a poor woman at the pool who says, Your kid's so cute.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Conversations like that can plant seeds or have
Yeah,
ripple effects you can't even imagine, because then her cousin's gonna have a
it's
kid
always
who does
like
the
that.
same, right?
Yeah. Usually, if
Um,
somebody's asking me, it's because they already have somebody in the back of their mind that they're like, This
interesting.
kid reminds me of this other person in my life, and I really want to talk to you. And
Interesting.
so I'm,
Yeah,
it's always halfway through the
that's cool.
conversation, discover, oh, my sister's nephew, blah, blah, blah. It's always something like that.
Yeah. Um, that it always makes me excited thinking about that ripple effect. And I think about that's how ideas around GLP happen. It's such a big ripple effect where now parents are coming in being
Hmm.
like, hey, I've heard about this idea or way of seeing my kid because of do. It's
Yeah, I
cool.
think the speeches motor planning piece also is having that moment of like it's rippling through and parents are looking at their kid and being like, oh my gosh, this makes so
I
much
see it.
sense.
Yeah.
Now I feel like this is a real thing I can ask a question about.
Yeah. Because it's giving them at least like piquing curiosity about like, wait, is this what I'm seeing in my kid? And
Hmm.
we've made some shifts too about giving better cues and models about this part of your body doing this. All right.
Right.
Like I think about that we did the rocket
The
launcher.
big, 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 big stump.
I'm gonna do a big stop. And of
Yep.
course, to make it rhythmic and musical, but I took a video of my foot doing it. I was giving a lot more language models around foot up, foot down,
Hmm.
rather than just the idea of stomp, connecting it back to the actual body parts doing it.
Right.
Because I've been
And
trying
look
to,
how quickly now, every time you bring out that toy, he sets it up, he gets his foot up, like he knows exactly what to do, and he
yeah,
gives a little gig, 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 da.
exactly.
It's so
Like,
cute.
yeah, referencing like the bot, because I'm trying to learn more about from this world of motor and how can we use language to support with motor. I already know about how much music helps with that, how rhythm helps with timing and pacing. And it seems so obvious when you say, oh, name the body part that is going to enact
Well, and it's funny
motor.
too, because I think about when he first started in-home therapy, that was at the time, the first one post, like in the late stage COVID that went in person and they came to the house was ABA.
Yeah.
And I remember very distinctly, we would be having our debrief conversations, and he would sing something from something they had been working on an hour before, right?
Okay.
And we'd be like, oh my gosh, echolalia, he's echoing. And there's
Mhm.
this huge, and we'd say, oh, delayed processing, right? We'd say all these things that would explain why he was singing it way later. What he is doing today, when familiar songs come on the TV or whatever we're listening to, he is immediately, he's singing along, you know?
Mhm.
And like,
Yeah, it's lining up
I don't know
together.
if I would have ever known what that means if we hadn't had the conversations we've had about
Mhm.
the motor planning, the control, the processing, the connections that he's making, that the fact that that gap is narrowing
Yeah.
is meaningful for his ability to be intentional in his communication, right? Just like the beckoning, right?
Yeah.
He's getting more intentional because the tracks have been laid and he's had all this practice. And when I try to tell people who don't know anything about autism or like brains or speech or anything, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, let me explain. He used to sing really late. Now he
Yeah.
sings at the same time. I look
Yeah.
crazy, right? I'm like, he
Yeah.
sings alone. But I'm able
Yeah.
to recognize it when for a long time it was just like, oh, he's just singing it later.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's from a lot of providing definitions, remembering to provide definitions, more definitions, but engaging in the collaborative analysis of why.
Right.
And I feel like just quickly, oh my gosh, you and I could go for 3 hours, but I'm noticing the time here. We had an example of this. This was last week. And because I do very selfishly want to provide some links about rock
Yeah.
climbing and
Yes,
autism,
yes,
because
go for it.
there's some really cool research about it. And I've started recommending it to everyone just for the coordination benefits. So when we think about, I gave one of what I call, we've got intro questions and outro questions. Some of my intro questions, maybe examples like, I recently have asked, like, do you want to start with the good stuff or the hard stuff?
Right.
Because it's normalizing that something this week was probably really hard. I'll ask something like, what went well this week? What are you proud of? I Sometimes if I have two caregivers, I'll ask them, what did you notice the other person doing well? People start to blush. Some people get a little teary-eyed. That's good for calibrating what's going on, the vibe at home too. Um, but for one of those like intro prompts, or that when we started to do the conversational coaching at the beginning, you brought up the rock climbing video.
Right.
Kind of
Oh,
just
bragging. I was
like,
like, I just have to show you this video of him. He
right,
did
let me just show
great.
you this cool, cute thing. And I
Mhm.
watched it and I was like, wait a minute. I have never seen his body move that smoothly, with that coordination, with that level of confidence. The way his body was engaging with that wall really stood out to me, which then opened up this conversation. It opened a door to
Great.
why, and then what can we do next with this?
Right.
So it started with, what was cool this week? What was great? Oh, rock climbing. And then suddenly we're in a very different conversation about proprioception, vestibular, points of contact, cue reading. Like,
Yes, the cue reading was big for
yeah,
me.
yeah,
I've watched that video 900 times because if nobody can tell, I'm obsessed with my kid and I probably need a break. But like, it's the thing where you've had the hard day and then at the end of the night, you're just scrolling, watching videos. I've watched that
yeah,
video so many times since our conversation and seen, I mean, his instructor also clocked it immediately. She was like, oh, he's mapped it out. He's doing it the same way every time.
yeah,
And I've gone back and looked at how the particular part of the wall he chose to work on was the Legos, and they're so protruding and colorful, and then they have the bars. it was giving him the answer of what to do next.
Yeah, I like
And
the
if
way you
we
said
can
that.
give him that structure, like the, what's it called? Stomp Rocket, right? You showed him this is how all the pieces work and what happens. And immediately he was able to follow those cues and give you the speech back, right? Like, I don't know if I'm right about how that all worked, but that's what I saw. And it makes me think about how I'm setting up his environment.
Yeah.
It's making me think about places where I can model differently about what's happening and what to do next, you know? So it was really, yeah, just out of a conversation about me wanting to brag about
Yeah.
him, said
Look at
what
this cute
well this week.
video, right? And it led to us thinking about, wait a minute, there's less visual noise. It's a blank background with like figure ground relationships. Then we were
Mhm.
talking about these points of contact on his body. Is the pressure of the harness
Right.
on around the pelvis, around the core,
Just reminded me
providing.
about the compression shorts that we talked about. I got it right down.
So
See?
yeah, talk about the idea of compression, right? It's happening right now. Of We were collaborating on it, and these topics, when it comes to like those points of contact in the body around compression, that is not my area of expertise, but it opens up these doors to look into other things, maybe talk to an OT who knows about like compression and weight.
Hmm.
But it's my phrase, like, it's always more than speech and it's always more than the kid. I could have just been like, that's a really cute video, let's get to language. But instead, it led to a conversation about things that might make better conditions for language to then grow.
Right.
Because we could model all day and like tell the flower to grow, or we can make sure the soil and the water is. I know you're a gardener, so I'm throwing
Yeah,
this.
it's all in the
That's
dirt.
that's
If
another thing
it's
I
so
do is,
good, doesn't matter what you do.
right. And that's, I think, another quick like coaching thing to throw in. Tailor your analogies to the caregiver's interests.
Hmm.
I try and do moments like that so that it lands better, just to throw that one in one more time. um I want to, there's two more things I want to make sure we pack in. One is I do want to share some of these resources about climbing, because after I went home that night and I was like, I have to see if there's some evidence for this, because my gut says there has to be, right? Clinical gut. And I found some really cool papers about, there's one, and of course, I'm going to be putting those in the chat for you guys who are here live. They'll be in the show notes for those listening later. There was one from 2025, Effect of an Indoor Climbing Program on Selective Attention of Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder.
Mm.
And they did find, and this one is available for free in the link I'm about to post. I love a free article. All right, so I'm posting that one here. And in the conclusion, they found the findings support that indoor climbing is effective in promoting the selective attention of children with ASD through the visual cues. So it related right back to what we were talking about, being able to find that paper. And then there is actually someone called the Climbing Doctor, and it is all about like rehab and therapy related to therapeutic climbing. So I'm posting a link here. It is there's a lot of great information where he is explaining a lot of the why, which I love. We also know that when people know why they should or could do something, they're more likely to follow through.
Right.
So
Right.
this
Like
is
tomorrow
one,
was a
yeah.
crazy day for me, and I'm like, I don't care. I'll take my meetings in the car. We are going to climbing.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I know this is not just like a fun activity.
That,
There's meaning to this. Like we can't, I'm treating it like it's one of his sessions, you know?
yes. And
Mm.
sessions, like,
Maybe I
again,
can use this
kind of
article to get insurance to cover it. Just kidding.
all about how you word it. But I do want to make sure we talk about the outro questions. We talked about intro questions to get it going. That's the reflecting on the joint plan from last time. But there's also the outro questions, which I know can be very annoying, but they allow for synthesis at the end. So what did you
Right.
notice
One
today? Oh,
thing
yeah.
about intro, really
Yeah.
quickly,
Yeah.
that I think you do really well. I know not every therapist can be as available outside of session time as you make yourself.
Yeah.
I also know there are weeks that I'm sending you texts and I'm putting things in a note in my phone, and you don't necessarily see them until you're on your way to our session, right? So it's really up to you how you want to open
Right.
yourself to
Yeah.
that.
There's
Giving,
boundaries around that. Yeah.
right, giving the
Mhm.
parent permission to send stuff along the way because we're going to forget. has been really, really helpful.
Yeah. And
Okay.
that could be email based. That could be, I love when people take notes or get like a whiteboard situation. But that also does depend on your setting, your professional boundaries. But having a place to put those ideas in the moment. Because how many times have I heard something great happen? I don't know what it was. Being able to put that down.
Sorry. So
But
out.
no, it's okay. It's okay. So something I'll ask is, what did you notice today? Because it makes it smaller. And also you might notice something different than I did. And that's valuable for me.
Mm-hmm.
What stood out to you today? It's not like, what did you learn? No, what stood out to you? What did you notice? Something I'll do often is, what from today do you want to take with you?
Right.
Again, it's not right or wrong. I'm wondering about your perception of this. What was your experience and perception of this experience we just had? Because it might be very different from mine. And that's really good to know. And then something I've been trying out lately is, if someone walked through the door right now, how would you explain what we just did? How would you summarize? Because then it's kind of like the teach back almost, but it's to some stranger or maybe another caregiver. How would you explain this to grandpa when he gets home? Because then you're going to hear it in their own language, and then you can calibrate to, oh, something might be missing here.
Right. Right.
So we talked about a lot today. We covered a lot. We didn't even talk about motivational interviewing, but that's
Yes.
okay. Third
That's what I have
episode.
a post-it right here that says
Third,
motivation.
right.
Oh, geez.
But we have come to the end. And so I want to just thank everyone who joined live tonight. We had a really nice active chat. Thank you for everyone who contributed about the parent roles. We got some of those papers and information about climbing, which could be something for you guys to consider or recommending for kids in your life. And I want to thank Cristina for coming on the podcast, talking about your experience, how it connects to your professional life, and sharing really powerful insights about what it's like on the other side.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm so proud to be able to contribute and work with you in all the ways. And
Yeah,
thanks to everyone.
yeah, seriously, everyone, for your participation. And once again, if you join live and you want credit for this continuing education, please go over to SpeechTherapyPD in your portal and complete the final task before the end of the day. And for those of you who are not a member of SpeechTherapyPD,